My grandfather, Stanley Wisniewski, rarely talked about his Navy days. However, from comments made over the span of his life, we were able to piece together his incredible story. He enlisted in the United States Navy at age 17, concealing his true age. He was first part of the Merchant Marines located in the Great Lakes. Following the Merchant Marines, he became part of the crew of the USS Indianapolis. He worked in the belly of the ship, maintaining and repairing the ship's engines. He was like many souls of the ship, not requiring glamour or attention, but was essential to the life of the ship. The quiet strength that he possessed is what enabled him to survive the unimaginable experience he and 320 other men would confront. He boarded the ship with 1,195 other seamen, of which only 900 made it into the water. After a successful mission delivering one of the nuclear bombs to an island close to Japan, the USS Indianapolis was spotted by a Japanese-controlled sub known as the I-58, commanded by Moshisara Hashimoto. The ship was struck by two torpedoes, sinking the ship at 14 minutes past midnight. The ship sank within minutes. My grandfather, Fireman Second Class Stanley Wisniewski, was propelled into the water, into the dark, cold ocean, along with 900 other comrades. He immediately tied his life vest tightly to his body. In the event that he became hallucinative and would try to remove it, he floated, covered in the ship's oil, along with many other men. The unfortunate combination of sea salt, sun, and oil burned their skin as they attempted to stay alive. On July 31st, 1945, the second day the men were in the water, he celebrated his 18th birthday. Adrift with only the barest rations, canned water, tiny bits of food, a flare gun, and a reflective mirror, these trained men used everything they could to survive. One by one, men started to die from heat exhaustion, exposure, dehydration, shark attacks, fatigue, wounds, and drowning. Miraculously, my grandfather, who was a high school decathlete from Detroit, was found with just his nose above water, struggling to survive. He prayed a lot, trying everything in his power to keep his mind focused. Temporarily blinded and barely alive, my grandfather was saved at the last possible moment by Lieutenant Adrian Marks. Shortly after his recovery, he was mercilessly redeployed with the assignment of sweeping the water to serve out the remainder of his enlistment. Eventually, he was awarded the Purple Heart. While in the water, my grandfather made 3 promises to himself if he made it out alive. The first promise he made was to stop swearing. He kept this promise, as my father cannot recall him saying an even single curse word. The second promise was to stop smoking, which he did. He never told anybody what his last promise was, although we have often wondered what it could have been. One can assume it was to attend church afterwards because he did so regularly following his time in the service. But that third promise does have other possibilities. I wonder about that promise. He was a true American, a family man with an excellent work ethic, which all may go back to his third promise. One can only assume. My grandfather returned to civilian life to own his own gas station and later tested and developed Ford motor vehicles. He raised a family and educated 3 children. He was a devout Roman Catholic, never wanted to talk about his accomplishments as a decathlete or even his time in the service. Ultimately, my grandfather retired to Florida, where he spent the rest of his days playing golf, painting Native American-inspired pieces, and caring for his ill wife. He passed away from a heart attack at the age of 67. As I grew up, my grandfather's story seemed like a tale of glory about an unknown man, but my father has done a diligent job ensuring I know my grandfather's story. In 2007, my father brought me to the USS Indianapolis reunion. At age 10, I did not fully comprehend the exceptional story of these men. I was excited by the escalators and long hallways, but I remember the older men becoming emotional, even though I could not really understand the dynamic. Now that I'm older, I have become more aware about what my dad has done for me to learn their story. I can now appreciate this experience and recognize the hardships these men went through for my freedom. I never met my grandfather, Stan Wisniewski. Our souls crossed in 1995 when he passed away in the summer of the same year I was to be born in the winter. I heard He had a dry sense of humor, flirted with waitresses, and had a knack for cars. His parents were from Poland. He came from nothing, living in a time where people's ultimate goal is to outlavish the other person. It becomes difficult for younger people to discern appearance from reality. Since I was young, I have the advantage of an internal filter that has helped me to see the truth more clearly. Since I live in a much more privileged time, it is nearly impossible for me to understand what he did except to keep in a constant replacement perspective. In other words, as I become closer to my grandfather's age during this life changing event, I become mindful of my life as a young, free man and his young life spent in the service. At his age, I was At his age, I was able to pour my life into sports without the fear of war looming over my head. I look forward to 4 years of college, whereas for him, that was not even a possibility. His sacrifices are very much with me and help me to savor my good fortune. My grandfather was a man of modesty and reticence. He never flaunted what he had or accomplishments. He was the ideal American. Where I hear Kanye West bluster on about his greatness, I ask myself, what have you done with your life, Mr. West? The memory of my grandfather helps me answer that question. Thank you.